We're in Calgary at the CSEP National Conference. I'm sitting down for a chat with CEO Zach Weston. Before we get into that, I just want to thank Airwave for bringing me out. I presented some stuff at the conference this morning to about 500 people around the research on how a simple mouthpiece can improve your power output and aerobic performance immediately. If you haven't checked that out, go ahead and get your hands on one. It's the cheapest thing to improve your performance straight off the bat. Now, we're going to talk a lot about exercise physiology, what it is, where the profession is going. If you're someone who's struggling with an injury, a deficit, you're trying to achieve a goal, you just struggle to get moving, go ahead and check the link in the description. My clinic sees heaps of people online who live nowhere near our clinic, and we would love to help you out as well. Now, without further ado, now let's just take a step back for people who don't know what CSEP is. It's the Canadian Society of Exercise Physiologists, but I think it has different definitions throughout the world. So just familiarize us with definition in Canada.
Sure. So I think what you're referring to is, the exercise physiology certification or the name.
Mhm.
So in Canada, we have a number of different membership categories within CSEP. We have academic members, who are those who are researchers and are advancing the science that informs our practice. And we also have professional members who make up 90% of the membership of CSEP, or the Canadian Society for Exercise Physiology. And between those professional members, they are a mix of certified personal trainers and clinical exercise physiologists. And they work with a whole range of individuals, from those living with chronic conditions, maybe it's heart disease, diabetes, neuromuscular disease, cancer,
Mhm.
all the way through to those that are training and competing for the Olympics and Paralympics and professional sports.
Yeah.
And we work with everybody in between to try to use exercise and physical activity and lifestyle and exercise as medicine models to improve their health and um, uh, livelihood.
Yeah, it's quite cool the number of branches that exist and the breadth to which people can be impacted. It's also really cool how Canada is one of the leading countries in the world in this field in terms of research. We can't really put a actual ranking to it, but do you think anyone else pulls their weight in sport and exercise rehabilitation research like Canada does?
It's a great question, and we hear repeatedly that Canada certainly does punch above our weight
Hmm.
with regards to both the quantity and quality of research that is published in exercise science,
Hmm.
which informs the clinical practice. So we're really thrilled, with that reality and the impact that we make.
Hmm.
But we have some notable, impressive partners internationally, and we are one of 5 founding members of the International Confederation of Sport and Exercise Science Practice. It's a big mouthful of a name, but it includes ESSA, which is Exercise and Sports Science Australia,
Yeah.
includes ACSM, the American College of Sports Medicine,
Hmm.
it includes Sport and Exercise Science New Zealand, and of course, it also includes BASES, or the British Association of Sport and Exercise Science.
Yeah, really good. And we just had a really cool breakthrough with ACSM, right?
We did, yes. Yesterday, we announced a new partnership
Hmm.
with the American College of Sports Medicine, which really it recognizes the equality between our two organizations and the passion that we both have for advancing medical fitness and clinical exercise physiology. Through this partnership, we'll be sharing resources so that content developed by our CSEP academic and professional members can be endorsed and shared to the ACSM membership, and vice versa. We'll be introducing some ACSM content to our members so that we can continue to expand and make an impact.
And is it true that ACSM came to you and just said, look, you're just better and we need you to move forward? That's accurate, right?
Well, maybe not quite in those words. I think there was a mutual respect that we recognize that, we both have we've developed things that they are interested in, and vice versa. They've got great content that we are interested in, and I've always been a big fan of the African proverb, which I first heard from Richard Branson, that if you want to go fast, go alone,
Mm.
but if you want to go far, go together.
Sure.
And it's in the spirit of collaboration that we're really excited to partner with ACSM
Hmm.
and our members like you. It's always thrilling to meet a member of CSEP, learn about what you're doing, learn about what perhaps you're struggling with in terms of your business or your career. And what I want to learn as my leadership role within CSEP is how can we how can we advance some of our initiatives within the organization to help our members to continue to create impact.
Hmm.
And I always say that there's no question the value that our members offer their patients or their clients,
Hmm.
but there is inequality in the value that they offer and the compensation they receive.
Sure.
And having been a clinician as a CSEP member for nearly 30 years, I feel that I'm in a good position to empathize with members to understand those challenges, and I'm fully committed to advancing much of what you spoke about this morning to,
Hmm.
recognize our members and provide better opportunities for them to be remunerated for the value that they create.
Yeah, yeah. For those who haven't seen that, there's a video of where I spoke this morning, which was I couldn't believe how many people were there. Like breakfast, the room was still packed out. It's incredible. There was about 500 people in the room, and a lot of what I spoke about is when I came from Australia, where maybe 50% of people understand what exercise physiology is in a clinical sense,
Mhm.
to Canada, where that number would be much lower and most people would know the high performance side of things. So I spoke a lot about how we need to show students that there's opportunities for them to be able to have a career in exercise physiology and be able to make a real impact. And really, I think succinctly put, there's a lot of people out here who would be in kinesiology programs, in human kinetics type programs, who have been promised this career path where you can impact people's lives and you can
Mhm.
change your part of the world. And it's just difficult to show people that that actually exists. So we could talk to both Americans and Canadians now, since we have that partnership reciprocal happening eventually. Talk about the actual options for people and why exercise physiology is the best route to go rather than just trying to get your PT certification. Or I think the bigger pull for some of the most highly qualified, intelligent candidates, why would you say exercise physiology over trying to get into physiotherapy?
Oh, great question. And I've been fortunate in my career to have an opportunity to teach in a kinesiology program for probably about 15 years. And certainly that's a lot of the mindset that students have in those programs is that they're using kinesiology as a stepping stone to get into other professional programs, whether it be physiotherapy or chiropractic or medicine
Yeah,
or others.
doctors. Yeah.
And I had that mindset, when
Yeah.
I was a student too. I thought, kinesiology would lead me to that path. But I don't know if it was a revelation or just a recognition that I was really passionate about the impact that I could make, and I loved what I was doing,
Yeah.
and carved out a way to make a career doing that.
Hmm.
And when I think about physiotherapy, certainly they ought to add a lot of value to what they do for their patients.
Hmm.
And years ago, I was told that if you really want to differentiate between exercise physiology and physiotherapy in terms of the prime focus, and I know there's overlap in terms of what we do.
Hmm.
Quite often a patient will go to a physiotherapist when they're injured and they have pain
Hmm.
and they're trying to recover from, some type of musculoskeletal or other, injury that's hampering their performance.
Yeah.
In contrast, a patient or a client may come to an exercise physiologist not when they're injured, not when they're hurt,
Hmm.
but simply when they have a goal. There's something that they're trying to achieve, whether it's to compete in a triathlon or lose some weight or decrease their risk from all cause, cardiovascular disease or metabolic syndrome and so forth. And so I really feel that the breadth and the variety, that's what I've really appreciated
Hmm.
as a clinical exercise physiologist. I've had such variety in the patients that I've been able to work with.
Hmm.
I've worked with patients who, on the one extreme, have had a heart transplant. On the other, I've worked with Olympians who've won gold medals and
Right.
NHLers who've won Stanley Cups
Yeah.
and virtually everybody in between.
Sure.
And it's that variety to be able to take the science of what I learned in the classroom and in the lab,
Hmm.
understand what matters most to that patient or client or athlete, and
Hmm.
use the science to periodize a program to help them better themselves and achieve the goal that they had set out for themselves.
Yeah. Talk to me about a heart transplant person.
Oh, fascinating. You know, one of the things I didn't know when I started, working with a patient with a heart transplant is a denervation of the nerve to the heart. So the SA node, which normally is fired at a
Yeah,
regular
right,
rate that responds to
right.
exercise, that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And post cardiac transplant, the heart beats at the same rate whether they're at rest or exercise. For the
Oh
first
man.
5 to 10 years, it's like that. So
What
you
a
can't use some of the tools that are common for
yeah,
monitoring intensity. And
yeah,
so it's really exciting working with patients and having full disclosure as a clinician to say, you know what, I've never worked with some
yeah,
with this before.
yeah,
I need to talk to some other folks. I need to do some more learning. This is why we have continuing professional education requirements so that people can continue to advance. I mean,
yeah.
we can't include all of the education in an undergrad program.
The oxygen delivery system would be just non-existent. It'd just be you're stuck standing, you hyperventilate from walking.
It's you talked about progressive overload
Yeah.
this morning,
Uh-huh.
and so some of those principles they absolutely apply, but
Hmm.
you don't necessarily have the same toolkit for monitoring
Yeah.
the response that individual has. So there's a lot of
Hmm.
observation and monitoring and looking at the patient to pick up through your experience
Hmm.
how people respond to exercise and use those cues to understand when they aren't responding well
Yeah.
and modify as necessary.
Yeah. Yeah. So cool. Now to change course a little bit, you know that I've got my clinic in Barrie.
Hmm.
You know that I'm
Next
gonna
time.
have, that's
Yeah.
right. You know that we're gonna have 30, 40, 50 across the country in 20 years' time. But for the moment, what's the path forward for CSEP to make sure that we're getting as many businesses and practitioners implementing all of that great research that we do?
Well, I would say it's a multi-step process that we are engaged within. And first, is looking at our strategic plan
Hmm.
that includes five main themes. And I think a couple of those themes that are relevant in this case is the recognition,
Hmm.
growing the recognition of our professional members and what exactly a CSEP certified personal trainer or a CSEP clinical exercise physiologist can do.
Hmm.
What is within their scope of practice?
Yeah.
Secondly, I would say within our strategic plan is the partnerships and the collaboration
Hmm.
with others, and where are those opportunities that we can continue to advance, the work and recognition of our members in different areas, whether it be in the employment sector, corporate wellness, the publicly funded healthcare system,
Hmm.
and certainly, we're going to double down on the news from the Ministry of Health in British Columbia, where they recognized our clinical exercise physiologists, not only to understand the work that they do, but the funding commitment to say we're not only going to pay for the conversion of those members who are eligible to become CSEP certified,
Hmm.
we're also going to have funded positions throughout the regional health authorities within the Ministry of Health
Yeah.
to help with the human resource shortages,
Hmm.
but leverage the scope of practice to its fullest extent, so that CEPs can really make an impact in the health of the patients that they'll see.
And I think the bit that you said to me that really was like, okay, they're taking it seriously, is starting salary for these people in British Columbia.
Absolutely. We saw one post. There was an early preliminary post that was over six figures.
Yeah.
And certainly that's probably an outlier compared to others, but in my mind, that's a better recognition of the value that these people are providing. And we are
Yeah.
going to continue to advocate, both through those channels as well as through, finding opportunities for insurance coverage
Yeah.
for patients and professionals across the country.
Yeah, it's crazy the way I think of it, and the value add. And first of all, like a good personal trainer, which is also pathways to become a personal trainer through CSEP,
Mhm.
but a good personal trainer compared to someone who has a kinesiology undergraduate who's a clinical exercise physiologist, It doesn't have to be that different, but I think if you look at a personal trainer and you say, when is the last time they did testing and retesting and periodized anything and had an actual plan rather than just heading in for a workout, it's so rare. And those are the areas that we really specialize in. And that's the bit that actually helps these people with unique circumstances actually be able to move forward. Um, so,
I used to always say, what gets measured gets done.
yeah,
And there's a certain sense of feeling, like patients will report feeling better, certainly, and going to a physiotherapist or chiropractor to help with certain aches and pains can help them to feel better
uh,
and move better. And I heard someone this morning say, first start with good quality movement, move better and then move often.
yeah, yeah.
And I think certainly the expertise of our professional members is in tune to really pick out those subtle nuances of when people aren't using good movement patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a difference certainly in terms of the quality, and it's no question why we use the slogan, the gold standard in
Yeah,
exercise science in
yeah.
personal training. We certainly believe our members are the creme de la creme.
Yeah, and look, I think it's not just movement pattern, but I think it's also behavior pattern. And I think
Yeah.
that carries through across the board, whether it's an athlete overtraining or someone who's just a bit lazy. It's just, there's so many ways in which people can be impacted. But what I was going to say is just getting back to that value piece. I think if we think of other allied health, which all have their place, but physiotherapists will help you not feel pain and chiropractors will help you not feel pain. There's significant value there for sure. You
Hmm.
compare that value to, say, a standard EP client is probably a middle-aged person, plays a bit of hockey, a little bit overweight, has a bit of a heart issue, something along those lines. You go, what's the value of losing weight to improve your life, of reducing your risk of heart disease, of reducing your risk of diabetes, of reducing your risk of all-cause mortality, of improving your likelihood of long-term independence, of getting your health span to match your lifespan, and you're adding up all of those changes and risks that you're making, and you're like, that value is just absolutely through the roof. I don't know if you're familiar with the research that came out of Australia. I think Deloitte did it, an
Yes.
independent research. And I don't know how much I'd buy the figure, but it was something like for every dollar that they spent on AP, it was something like an $11 return.
I am familiar with that
Yeah,
report,
yeah,
and certainly, in fact, I shared that report with the ministry in British Columbia to share that it was an independent report that
uh-huh,
Deloitte looked at.
yeah,
And from what I recall, for every dollar that was invested in clinical exercise physiology services, it saved $10
yeah,
in
that's
terms
right.
of healthcare
That's right.
expenses. I think the primary focus there were on folks who were living with diabetes and metabolic syndrome and
Yeah,
cardiac disease.
yeah.
Um, but it's no question, the impact, and
Hmm.
there's all kinds of trials that have been looked at over the years. The metformin versus the lifestyle
Mm,
for folks with diabetes, and
hmm.
certainly the lifestyle trial group certainly performed far better at preventing diabetes.
Hmm.
So I look at that Deloitte study, and it's one of few that I think can put that easily convertible return on investment dollar figure,
Yeah.
but it's one that is a beacon of, I think, practicality in terms of that's the message that we've been believing
Hmm.
forever. We've often heard it's really hard to get investment in prevention.
Hmm.
But if we don't invest in the types of things that we know will have a long-term impact on
Yeah.
delaying or preventing chronic conditions, we will spend infinitely more. And you referenced earlier, the work from the book Dr. Peter Attia and Outlive, and the idea
Mm,
about the health span versus lifespan,
hmm.
and how medicine 2.0 has allowed us to live longer, but living longer with disease versus
Yes.
the health span idea is to live longer with the full capability to do all that you desire to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And when it comes to the chronic disease, it's even like once you have diabetes, you should say diabetes, you had it and it could never be cured. It's then time to triple down on preventing heart disease because that's coming right away. And if you have heart disease, then your stroke risk is massive. So now we need to reduce the risk of stroke. And it's just health and exercise can go in such a snowball one way or the
Hmm.
other, and there's so many internal processes that promote or take away from your
Hmm.
your betterment of health. And the thing is, like I said this morning, I think if it was an implementation conference, 25% would be psychology, because in the end, as clinicians, we're psychologists, and like, how does this work in your life? And you know, I know you feel bad about how you look, but and you didn't lose any weight, but your movement is so much better, and now you're more active in health risks, and it gets into such a web that it does take quite a bit of training and expertise to be able to communicate to someone effectively.
Agreed, 100%. And it is one of the things that we do build into the training of our
Mhm.
clinical exercise physiologists and certified personal trainers.
Yep.
The ability to do motivational interviewing in an effective way with a client to truly understand what matters most to them,
Hmm.
build a program to help them. We've got guidelines, which are great, and we can strive to achieve those guidelines.
Yep.
But a good friend of mine, Jonathan Fowles from Acadia University, I think said it best years ago when we were both at a conference in Moncton, New Brunswick. He says, you can't change the physiology unless you first change the psychology.
Hmm.
We need people to be on the right mindset and the um, you know commitment level
Yep.
to make the change.
Hmm.
And the best exercise program in the world, or best exercise prescription, is useless if the people don't do it.
Yeah. 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 We talk about all the time at the clinic, just economically, what's the most likely reason that someone leaves early? And I think if you asked a university student, they would say, "Oh, your programming wasn't right," or,
Mm.
you know, your plan wasn't quite right, or your interview. So no, it's just if they don't like you. Full stop. If they don't like you, they're never coming back. It's like operation number one is build rapport, and then
Mhm.
the nuance of it is like 7, 8 steps down the track. Okay, well, what cardio protocol are
Mhm.
we actually doing to get the best results?
Mhm. Absolutely, that trust
Hmm.
between the clinician and the patient needs to be there. And starting with motivational interviewing to understand what the drivers are, what the motives are for why that person has come in to see you,
Hmm.
and customizing a program based on what their needs are and what their goals are.
Hmm.
And I'll never forget, I think personally, one of my favorite patients I ever saw in terms of when I'd asked, what's the goal? And this woman told me that her goal was to be able to dance at her granddaughter's wedding.
Wow.
And so I asked her, I said, well, when's the wedding? I said, I have no idea. She's only 2 years old.
Oh, oh, right. Yeah. And that's the people who get it is so rare. And like that's someone who gets it. Like,
Yes.
that's amazing. That's really good. Let's just change course a little bit, talk about the high performance side of things. So CSEP is the required credential for someone to work with the Canadian Olympic team.
So, in providing the services of exercise physiology, this is a
Hmm.
new requirement that through Own the Podium and Sports Scientists Canada, they've made a requirement for the inclusion of holding a CSEP clinical exercise physiologist plus the high performance specialization and a graduate degree.
Right.
So that is new as of last year, and so we've gone through a process for all of the current staff who are working at the Canadian Sport Institutes and sport networks across Canada
Hmm.
to ensure that they all have that requirement now. So quite a few of those staff had to go through the exams this past year, and now they are all meeting that standard, and that,
Yeah.
in our opinion, is great for Canadian Olympic and Paralympic athletes.
Yeah. And it's just a great vote of confidence from the Olympic Committee that this is the one that they're going to go with.
100%. And simultaneously, we're also doing a refresh on the high performance specialization to make sure that it is, current, up to date, and we do that with all of our content to make sure that it is refreshed regularly.
Hmm.
But we've engaged with the leaders throughout the Canadian sports institutes across Canada,
Hmm.
as well as other leaders, including folks from the Canadian Strength and Conditioning Association,
Hmm.
to help us to make sure that our content is the best that it can be.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is a really cool thing to be a part of, and uh, I can't believe the attendance. I'm really, really impressed with how many people and how engaged everyone is, even when it's just, yeah, I mean, I don't put myself at the top of importance of who people would want to listen to here, but everyone's engaged and asking questions and really excited. So I'm really proud to be a part of CSEP, and thank you very much for the work you're doing, and we're doing together to move everything forward. And I think 10, 20 years time, we'll be in a pretty special place.
Absolutely. I think we're in a special place already,
Yeah,
but looking forward to where we can go together. So thank
absolutely.
you so much for coming, and really appreciate
Of
you
course.
spending a bit of time with me.
Of course.